Welcome to the Daily Debate, live here from Cairo. I'm Taghreed Hussein, and I have the pleasure of your company. For the coming hour, we'll be talking about important headlines in the news. Important headlines in the news was the President calling for a new African order for development. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has called for a new African order to be led by the whole of Africa, leading to a sense of increased cooperation in the field of trade and also collective action against terrorism. The call actually comes timely while we can see Egypt's approach towards Africa after the two revolutions changing. We're back to Africa. The president made the call while he was receiving a delegation of journalists from sub-Saharan Africa at the presidential palace here in Cairo, and explained that this new African order, as the president sees it, is not to be led by Egypt alone, but we need concerted efforts on behalf of the whole African continent. And this sense of effort, this sense of harmony that we are going to be working together with Africa is going to meet the needs of the people who want prosperity for the whole kingdom. So the president said that if Africans live well in their countries, they will not immigrate to the developed world, and that is very true. That's why we need this sense of concerted efforts, and today we'll be talking about Egypt's new approach towards Africa, of openness and the prospects of cooperation also between Egypt and the fellow African brothers. More news. President al-Sisi has ordered the creation of a special economic zone surrounding Suez Canal, part of a long-planned ambitious project in order to develop the area adjacent to the strategic waterway. The project will span over 460 kilometers, would involve 6 ports that include 1,000 factories, and will offer investors 18 projects that are worth nearly $40 billion. The second leg of a program to develop the canal after Egypt opened last week a new expansion to the vital shipping lane. Officials say that the main aim of the new industrial and logistical zone is to boost the role of the waterway in international trade and also to raise the revenues to stimulate the country's economy. Further highlighting that important headline, we have with us online Professor Dr. عماد مهنا, economic expert. Dr. عماد, thank you very much for talking to Nile TV.
Thank you very much. Good evening. Yes.
Good evening to you. Sir, the law that regulates the special economic zone, as you see it, how far is it going to be of benefit?
Definitely, I think, number one, President Sisi has managed to restore the fact that we are an African country, despite the fact that we are Arab by ethnicity, but we are an African country. I think what that fact was ignored for quite some time, probably since 1995, and the trial of assassination, the former President Mubarak. Secondly, I think President Sisi is fully aware of the exploitation of the developed world over the developing countries, using them as a farm to gain all raw materials, manufacture them in their own countries, and then send them back using them as countries. So I think the call of President Sisi here works on the value-added economies that enable Africans to use their own natural resources, manufacture them on-site, and export them to the rest of the world, which would definitely increase the national revenues for all countries combined. And we do have a number of regional trade blocks like the COMESA, the SADC, and probably the MENA, the Middle East and North Africa, but it's a bit weak. I think the call here really assures that Africans need each other. Countries were exploited for many decades and used as farms. So I think it's a new vision for Africa, and we're hoping that this cooperation will result in economic growth for every country to benefit from, and fight, definitely, as you kindly mentioned in the beginning, terrorism and poverty, because most of the poverty really lies in Africa, disease and illiteracy. And I think these 3 areas will definitely benefit a lot from the education.
Right. Dr. Mohanna, well, the new industrial and logistics zone, definitely it is going to have an impact not only on Egypt and the region, but the whole world. How is it going to play a role in international trade as you see it?
I think unfortunately it was, planned and it was a vision of the apartheid South Africa, but they had the vision for a road called Cape to Cairo. And that road is already, part of it was done on the Egypt side. South African side, it's called the N1, or the National Road Number 1. And the aim behind it was to actually reach Cairo. I think that vision needs to come back and have a road that basically connects all the African countries. In addition to that, the expansion of the Suez Canal, I think, will help the Africans to have basically an industrial zone that can all benefit from, and on top of that, they can basically and promote and translate their own industries to the rest of the world at a fraction of the price, which they use really at the Cape Good of around South Africa. I think the Suez Canal saves about 59% of the cost. And I think the southern countries, particularly the southern African countries, including South Africa, Zimbabwe, Namibia, Zambia, Botswana, and Lesotho, I think they will all benefit from that. And it's really a vision that is strengthened by a lot of resources in Africa. Transportation is available, and I think, again, the tunnels, 7 tunnels we're talking about as part of the Suez Canal Development Corridor will connect Asia to Africa, and definitely the Africans will benefit from that.
Yeah. Dr. Mohanna, what was quite interesting also to notice concerning Suez Canal celebration was the heavyweight representation on behalf of the different countries. What was interesting to notice is that Africa was very much well there in the celebration.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and this actually sends a message, a signal here.
Yes, definitely. I think the Africans started to really become more active after the problem of our revolution on June 30th, where Egypt really had a problem with the African Union. I think they started to realize that Africa is vital to the Egypt is vital to the development in Africa. And definitely the mega projects that Egypt is proposing will definitely help Africa. And not just the Suez Canal, Mr. Hussein. We also have the Al-Daba nuclear station that will also help Africa. We've got the number of the wind energy as well as the solar energy. All these energy projects will help Africans because they lack energy, and definitely they will be able to get energy from Egypt, and that will help them basically boost the economy, definitely.
Right, you are. Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Ahmed Mohanna, for joining us on the Daily Debate Live tonight. The president is to visit Russia by the end of August, and that is expected to take place on the 26th and the 27th of August. The announcement comes following a meeting that took place between the Russian Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev and President Sisi in Ismailia on the sidelines of the opening of the new Suez Canal last Thursday. Putin paid a 2-day visit to Egypt in February to meet with President Sisi that was aimed at boosting Moscow's relationship with Cairo. The president also attended celebrations in Moscow that was back on May the 9th of last year. The president met with Putin in the Russian city of Sochi on the 12th of August 2014 as president, and previously in Moscow in February of the same year as defense minister. The presidential sources said that President Sisi will visit China, Singapore and Indonesia by early September. So as we see, Egypt opens. More on Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry's activity. He held phone talks with Croatia's first deputy to the Prime Minister and the Minister of European-Croatian Relations on media reports related to the killing of a Croatian hostage. The spokesman for the Foreign Ministry, Councillor Ahmed Abu Zaid, had said that Shoukry asserted that authorities did not receive confirmed information on the killing of the hostage. However, he noted that searches for the kidnappers. Shoukry said that the Egyptian and the Croatian officials agreed to keep contacts over the issue in the coming period. So that was part of the news that we have for you. We're concentrating today on the African file, Egypt returning to Africa, and more about the future prospects of Egyptian-African relations. The president has called for benefiting from free trade agreements with the African countries. The following report highlights
President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has called for a new African order led by the whole of Africa, leading to increased cooperation in trade and collective action against terrorism, considering that 8 or 9 African nations are currently being attacked by terrorists. During a meeting on Monday with a delegation representing newspapers in some African countries, the president said he has been keen since coming into office on openness to and boosting ties with African states. The president called on African nations to stand together against every form of extremism and terrorism. He also urged nations not currently affected by terrorism to cooperate with those affected and not wait until it comes to their doorsteps before they begin to fight it. El-Sisi also stressed the importance of benefiting from free trade agreements signed with African countries, topped by the agreement reached recently in Sharm el-Sheikh between the Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa, the East African Community EAC, and the African Southern Development Community SADC. Presidential spokesman Ambassador Ala Youssef said that the president welcomed the African journalists during the meeting, which came days after the inauguration of the new Suez Canal project. He said the president affirmed the new project is in parallel with the efforts to boost transport movement, including the project of Victoria to the Mediterranean. The president discussed with African journalists aspects of cooperation between Egypt and African countries, pointing out that such cooperation is not limited to technical support to them, but also extended to important partnerships, added the spokesman. He said that the president pointed out that the cancer hospital in Egypt received 600 medics from the Nile Basin countries who received training during the past 3 years. El-Sisi stressed the importance of cooperation in the fields of combating terrorism and said that terror combat must not be limited to security, but rather must be through economic and social issues.
We're back, and today we're talking about Egypt once again, back to Africa, Egypt and Africa. On one hand, it's very important that we address this important file. Egypt approach towards Africa, particularly after the two revolutions that the country had witnessed, it totally changed. And always honored and pleased to have with us Professor Dr. Mona Zaki, CEO, Global Strategic Consultants. Thank you so much, Professor Mona, for coming to the Daily Debate Live for tonight.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you, dear. Well, a very important file, Egypt and Africa together one hand, and a sense of realization that Africa's future, and working hand in hand with Egypt in a sense of partnership. How do you see or evaluate this coming timely now?
Yeah, we have to talk a bit historically, not long time ago, but we have to accept the fact that Africa has been on the move and on the go for several years we missed.
Right.
Already, I have attended few summits and few conferences on Africa internationally, worldwide, in Europe. I was impressed by the quality of educated Africans, so eloquent, so well educated, so presentable. In a way, I was really impressed. I said, oh my goodness, we miss this quality. We don't see this quality and we don't see those projects. So we have been missing a lot in Africa, and finally, after our revolutions and after the attention and after the awareness, not just regarding Africa, but the awareness of our own vision as Egypt playing a leading role on the international arena, on the international level, playing a leading role and pivotal role worldwide, including Africa. Finally, we have the attention and we have the awareness of paying this attention and care and role in Africa.
Right.
And that's why we start by the vision. What do we want to reach and what is our goal?
Right. The visions, goals, how can this be translated into action? That was the President talking with journalists from sub-Saharan Africa, telling them that it was very important, meantime, that we would have concerted efforts in that domain, that we would work together united. He called for a new African order.
Yes.